introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Jaren.
I'm Greg.
And we're Pentavera. And together we made this game Hangeki, you see before you right here. So for the game, I primarily did like a lot of the gameplay stuff, a lot of the weapon programming, and a lot of the level work.
I kind of did the stuff sort of around the game, so menus here, the high scores at the end of the level, a couple of the effects that you see way in the background of the levels, but mostly menus, interface, stuff like that.
Yeah, so Hangeki as a whole, it was really, it's all about kind of, bullet hell shooters and that kind of stuff, your traditional shoot 'em up type games. The enemies always seem to be the cooler ones, right? Like they have all the cool attacks, they do all the cool stuff, and you get this little pea shooter and just like whittle down their health bars, and it's like, that's lame, right? We don't want that. So Hangeki was all about kind of like empowering the player and putting the main focus on your weapons. You are the flashy one in this game, and the focus is really on that, and you'll definitely see that, and mainly in the weapon system, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, we can just kind of jump into it right now.
Hi, by the way, everybody.
Oh yeah, and over here, so the voice that just talked, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Terrence, I am the artist. Pretty big guys. Well, pretty scary looking. Yeah, that was really fun. I'm terrible at this game, so they're gonna play.
Yeah, so we're gonna jump right in. And this is the first level here, and then, okay, so you see all these like icons and stuff, don't worry about that. So each of these is a weapon. There's 51, or
51 now?
I think there's 51. Yeah, there's a lot.
This time I played, there was 25.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of stuff there. But don't worry about that too much. We'll kind of go through some of them, but once again, the big focus is on the weapons. You unlock these one at a time. You start with 4, and then you unlock them for like completing levels, beating challenges, all that stuff. So yeah, then we'll just jump right into it.
What is that question mark?
Oh, it's a random.
Oh, neat. Okay, smart.
It's like random character.
Yeah.
Alright, so it's a fixed screen shooter, so kind of like Space Invaders, Galaga, that stuff. Destroy enemies, and they're going to drop those coins. If you grab those to charge your meter, and that's what lets you use your weapons. We'll get into that in a bit. But once you destroy enough enemies, that bar at the top will flash, and you can do that. So that's the Hangeki, which is where the game gets its name from. And basically that just lets you blow up the screen and lets you keep moving. Keeps the pace really fast. Because, like in old-fashioned Space Invaders and Galaga, it was always really annoying to pick up those last enemies. Yeah, so you get rid of that and just move on. But yeah, so you see Greg here using a lot of the weapons and stuff. And that's powered by the meter, the energy meter in the bottom right corner. So as you get coins, that meter will fill up, and has 3 levels. It has level 1, level 2, and level 3. And then the weapons have different ranks too. So you have the level 1 weapon, level 2 weapon, level 3 weapon, and they need the same amount of weapon, and the same amount of meter. And then weapons are controlled by a cooldown system, so you can't just spam them. And if you're not shooting anything, your meter will actually start to decay. So it's all about staying aggressive, always firing, right? Because otherwise you're just going to lose your meter anyway. And really the overall focus was just all about the weapons, the pacing, really letting you make plays almost. And the fact that it's a fixed screen shooter and not like your traditional scrolling shooters where you get drip feeded enemies and stuff. And that was really just because of making scrolling shooters, like traditional scrolling shooters, is really hard. And I originally started this project in an art class actually, just sketching out the concept, and I was like, making scrolling levels is really hard, and I didn't know anything back then. I was a freshman in college, so I was like, oh, let's do fixed screen shooters because those are easier, right? So that's how the format came about. And actually, the Hangeki as a mechanic wasn't in the game in the original build, believe it or not. And even though it's like one of the flashiest things about the game, and most people recognize it for that, originally it was just weapons and waves, and that was it. But what I found in early playtesting was, the problem Space Invaders has is once you get to the last few enemies, it's really boring because like nothing happens, and you're stuck trying to pick off the enemies and stuff. But here we finally get the boss, of course. Yeah, so this is the first boss, and flying over the burning city and stuff. And this boss is pretty tame. They get a little bit more extreme later, but. So, oh yeah, and then each boss is totally unique and all that stuff. And so once you beat the level, you can get your high score, and it'll tell you a bunch of stats. So like how you got your different kills with weapons, what you died to, kind of your kills over time. So the big spikes mean that's when you like made a big play and blew a bunch of enemies up, and things happen. So yeah, and it records your high score with all the weapons. And we also have global leaderboards, which download from online, and you can see how much you suck against all the other players who are actually like good at the game and make you feel bad. But you can see what weapons they used, so you can copy them and get the meta going. So their Bitcoin purse at the top, rocking weapons. You definitely see the whatever that little blue orb thing, top tier. Everyone's taking that. But yeah, so that was just the first level, and it once again starts out pretty easy, because the idea behind that was we wanted to start the game off intentionally a lot easier than most people would be accustomed to, and a lot of the response was the game is almost too easy in the beginning. And yeah, that's the case for most people, but there are of course some people who do find that interesting. We haven't played as many shoot 'em up, so that kind of so like Terrence kind of sucks at them. So
I'm really not good at it.
we want to give players a lot of time to ease into it, especially because it's not just a shooter. We have this whole weapon system with this whole mechanics and stuff. So we really want to make sure players have a lot of time to kind of get the rhythm of it, have time to safely figure out what they're doing.
Which I do like actually something about the game in general. I really like it. I mean, whenever I was describing it to people at like conferences or anything, it was always like this. I told them it was very rhythmic, and like you build up your combo, build up, and then like release the Hangeki thing.
So actually, there's a term for that actually. That was that intentionally came about as part of the game. Now we're talking is catharsis. So emotional release. So. Right. It makes like when you're about to beat a wave, you blow them up with a Hangeki. It's like yes, right? That's the high point. Versus in like Galaga and Space Invaders, it's a slog. You're like, one more enemy, and you're just like, this sucks. Because you're trying to pick off that last guy, right? But Hangeki, no, you just push the button, blow him up. It's awesome. So the end of a level is the high point. So yeah, so we're gonna start going more into the weapons here. So here Greg's picked out a set, and I'll kind of actually hit on what the weapons actually do rather than just seeing things explode. Because the big goal of the weapons is they all are very unique. It's not just lasers where one's blue. It's they all have very different effects. So Greg's level 1 here is the artillery blaster, and what that does is it drops a turret wherever you are, and that turret will keep firing at whatever's ahead. So it's a very safe weapon. It lets you drop it and then just run away. So it will apply damage even when you're not under the wave. And so right there, that was the crystal artillery. So that weapon, it looks like exactly what it does. You deploy it, and then it'll charge it for a while, and then after a moment, it'll burst, release, and basically just destroy everything in front. Really strong weapon. Yeah, so by moving your ship, you angle the crystals, and that has different beams, and that will, destroy different enemies, different places. It has, and then here we have the incinerator, the Infernix incinerator. So Greg just knocks a bunch of and it explodes. So really what happened there was he used it, and then a bunch of little like balls fell down. You collect those into the core, and then after a period of time, depending on how many you got, it explodes, and the explosion is bigger if you collected more of them. And I think Greg's got a level 3 here, so we'll be able to use this level 3 weapon. And so that's the Deathfire Lotus. And that one's a pretty straightforward one, but it has a little nuance. Basically destroys all the enemies in front of you, and then gives you a shield based on how many you destroyed. So the more you destroy, the longer your shield lasts. So it's kind of an interesting offense-defense thing going on there. So a lot of the game, it's very flashy, and a lot of people actually, one of the big criticisms is this, a lot of things flashing at me and I don't know what's going on. And like, it makes it hard to play in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I think a lot of the appeal of these types of games is just how flashy it is. I mean, don't just flash a little bit, don't have small explosion, you got an explosion, big explosion, right? It's gonna be, bullets, like a lot of bullets, right?
Right. Is there a restriction for like if you
So what that's called is that was considered, and that's called grazing.
Right.
And like the actual bullet hell. That's the actual bullet hell term, right? You graze the bullets. Hangeki itself doesn't give you anything for that because we score. Oh, I'll talk about our scoring system later, but grazing doesn't give anything.
System, really.
There is a weapon that doesn't.
Oh, I heard of this. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. These were really fun to design. It was hard. It was like one of my first games ever made. But Darren here was super good at being an art director.
I guess maybe.
No, I mean for like, I don't know. You pushed me and it was good because I was like, oh, this looks cool. Well, it could be cool. Like, what? It just took 4 hours.
Wow.
But then he was right. It totally does look cool. That's especially cool in the final boss.
So here Greg makes the boss look pretty easy. I mean, he died a couple times because the boss runs into your face. You also get medals and stuff. So
this part is great.
yeah. So there's different ways to beat the level. If you just beat it, you get that middle piece, and then the other pieces are unlocked by doing different things like beating it without dying, beating it under par time, that kind of stuff.
Part time on that one. I thought I was close.
And actually, speaking of par time, so the game is entirely scored based on time. So if you look at all the global scores and all that stuff, there's no like numbers, there's no big like million points. It's all time. And that was very intentional because it means it's very easy to compare yourself to other people. So we want to try to make this game, reasonably competitive.
I'm sorry, are there speed runs? Or are there speed runners?
There's some pretty good times.
There's some really good times that even
the first level when
I
I just played it now, it took me 3 minutes. I think the top score, is a minute and a half. So less than half of what I took.
So a guy could beat it like 2 times in the time we beat it in 1.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, you see some of our names on there, and when we're trying, we go try hard, and we can bust out the moves too.
I'm only like 10 seconds behind.
But yeah, you have that kind of stuff going on. But yeah, everything's based on time, so it's all about going fast. There's no arbitrary combos. There's no way to arbitrarily, maximize or minimize, right? It's very much just go fast. So actually, I want to switch things up a bit and just kind of give you an idea of when like I'm playing the game, what I'm kind of thinking here. So I'll kind of do we'll do 2-player. Yeah, there's also 2-player. There's a lot in this game, but I'll kind of do a stream of consciousness and just kind of describe my thought process and as I'm going through the game. For the weapon select, different weapons. It's kind of hard. You won't know all of them out of the gate, but you also won't have them all out of the gate. You'll learn them one at a time.
Yeah, you start with just 4, and then pretty much everything you do will unlock one at a time.
Right, but the general strategy with weapons is you want to different weapons do different things, so you really want to pick weapons that don't conflict with each other, and you don't want all your weapons to do one thing. So, the good example is the Triple Seeker here and the Pulse Laser here. The Triple Seeker, Greg has been using that a lot. It fires those 3 missiles that explode, and it's just all around good. And then you have the Pulse Laser, which is just a laser that fires up in a row. And these 2 weapons do very different things strategically. The Triple Seeker kind of blows up all the enemies in front, whereas the Pulse Laser will really let you penetrate the wave and hit, dangerous enemies in the back. So here I'm playing the high level, so I'll take the Triple Seeker because I want good overall, just AOE, consistent, safe damage. And then we'll go for the Blockade Buster, which is kind of like a shotgun, and that will really just kind of break the front of the waves.
Excuse me, there was a request on the
How was co-op? Maybe co-op. Okay, I guess we can show that now. We can show that right now.
All right, I'll jump in. There you go.
So co-op is the same rules as the original game, except some things are slightly tweaked, and you'll kind of see that. But yeah, so it lets both players pick a bunch of weapons, and since there's 2 of us playing, there won't be too much time to explain too much. But we'll try to pick weapons that are kind of flashy together and somewhat combo, maybe. So here, for showing try hard, we'd coordinate and make sure that our weapons don't conflict too much either.
Instead, I'm just gonna slow the game down and use the sword.
Yeah, because we're streaming.
We don't need
all
performance.
He's going sword, and I can. So I'll take a good 2. There are some weapons that are definitely better in co-op than others. So if you unlock a weapon in this game, you might be like, oh, this weapon's useless. It might actually just be better in co-op, and vice versa. Some weapons kind of suck in co-op, and they're really good in single player. So the combination is what makes things interesting. But yeah, so I'm Jaren, and I'm the guy on the left, and then Greg.
I'm Greg. I'm on the right now.
I'm not playing because I still suck.
You can jump in later if you
I
want.
will. No, I'll play later and I'll fail and miserably ruin your score. But
It's not my fault.
So we're on the first wave. We both don't want to burn too many cooldowns. Maybe clear faster there. But really, once you get those level up, so as you destroy enemies, you'll gain experience and now level your character up. And then once you level up, you'll start unlocking and powering up the weapons you picked. So right now I can use my blockade buster. And then, see right now, my blockade buster is like, wow, that sucks, right? Yeah, it only shot one. But as you level up, this weapon scales incredibly well with levels, so when you level up, you'll get a lot more shots by the end.
Actually, the weapon I just used, the artillery drone, attack drones, will also scale quite a bit with level. At first it does 3, at the end it will have about 5 and last about twice as long.
Right, so a lot of weapons, that's another decision in picking weapons, is weapons scale differently. So some, like the Triple Seeker, don't really change that much with levels, they just kind of get more damage, you know, kind of pretty marginal stuff. But other weapons need those levels. So if you only pick weapons that scale, you're going to have a really tough early game and it's going to go really slow. But if you pick weapons that don't scale at all, then your late game is going to be a lot harder. Because as wave gets harder, your weapons aren't going to get stronger.
There's another thought with just what the waves are like in general. So what Jaren had mentioned earlier about the pulse waves will give you a lot of piercing damage. In a wave like this, you might notice that there's a lot of these armored guys and the bombs behind them. I can either waste the weapon right now and kind of slowly get back there, or I can use the pulse waves and just take out the entire column and take out the armored guys and the guys behind them in one shot. So that's a really good weapon on waves like this. I forgot to say it.
Yeah, so those little shield guys are basically immune to your blaster, your standard shot, but weapons do like triple damage against them, so they pretty much get destroyed by any weapon. And the strategy is, managing, you have to break them with your weapon, but you don't want to waste your cooldown, so it's tricky.
Surprise of the
Yeah, so that one's like controlled by moving your ship, you swing the sword.
that's a ridiculous.
It's crazy. Oh, no,
Actually, it was inspired by the game Hammer Fight.
Nice.
I don't know if you heard about that. It's like little ships, you move them around with your mouse and kind of swing like hammers and stuff around with it.
And thematically, if you know the game Okami, yeah, there's a lot of game references in these games, and so of course we play the game.
No.
So yeah, so the Thunder Edge is also a Okami reference. That's where it gets its theme from. But
Totally different.
yeah, so the weapon I just used right there, where it made the sound to have the purple mist, that's called the miasma, and what that does is percent damage to enemies, which is really good in co-op, because enemies have increased health because there's 2 players, but percentage damage scales really well as enemies get older, right?
So many bullets.
Yeah, so your hitbox is really small and stuff. Your hitbox is really small. Your hitbox is like your little cockpit, so that little white triangle thing. But yeah, it doesn't mean it's not easy to die.
Conveniently in co-op, you only lose a life when both people die, so
Yeah.
we're not losing lives at all.
But you have half the lives, so
right.
there you go.
You're
So,
shared.
right, so you're shared. So
Well balanced.
some levels are easier in co-op, some levels are like impossible in co-op. So you also stay dead longer in co-op, obviously. So if one player dies, if you die in a single player, it's usually like a 2-second respawn. If you die in 2-player, it's like a 4-second.
It's actually a significant thing outside of just making it so you have to live longer when the other person dies. It makes it a bit harder to keep your meter in co-op too, because now if you die, you're going to be dead long enough that your meter will just decay to 0. While in single player, you can usually salvage, you'll salvage a little bit of it. This isn't going to work.
So the computer's having a little hard time streaming and running the game.
I got a little bit.
I can probably use this the angle. So this is a game reference too.
I don't know what.
I know. That's the big secret.
This one, I forget. I'm totally.
Oh, this is a really fun boss.
Okay, so the strategy of this boss is, we're going to show you the advanced strategy. So, the biggest thing people mistake is you move too much. When the boss first attacks, you just kite back slowly and move to the side, and then you pull all his turrets together. So you can get all the AoE out on those turrets and not die.
And not die.
That's actually why I picked the Gatling artillery that I picked on this level, because it lets you place it down below them and then get out of the way into safety. But it'll keep doing damage on them. It'll keep your meter up and it'll destroy them over time.
Right,
It's
so
a really good
and if you
weapon.
remember the blockade brush I used earlier, I'm pretty much full level now, so if I use it, I'll get the full spread.
Whoa.
So there's a lot more shots now and they do a lot more damage.
I have a question. Program. So there is a vibration.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
there's rumble.
They rumble all over.
And it makes it a lot easier, because when it stops rumbling, you know, it's feedback that you're hitting something, and hitting things is really hard. So if it stops rumbling, it's like, hey, you're not hitting anything.
You're probably dead.
Right, yeah. You probably. Yeah, I like that. It was really fun. It's like, once I got through like the first like 3 or whatever, the first half, I had enough like I don't know, like just kind of go nuts with it, and then it was really cool. Like the way we made them, we just used black and white silhouettes at first. I don't know if anyone's interested. I don't know if it's really people are interested or that's what I think so. But yeah, it was really cool. Like we made just straight black silhouettes and made all kinds of different spaceship shapes, basically. And we just kind of went through and picked what we liked based on the function of the boss and what he was going to be doing. And then we just went from there. And then, like I said, like after a while, we could just pick apart different shapes from other bosses and remix them into new shapes.
Alright, so yeah, so that was actually a really cool thing, because it makes them visually kind of consistent, but also makes it a lot
Enough, yeah.
different enough. It also makes it more efficient to make them, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
You can't be spending like 24 hours on every single boss.
No.
So you need to keep them moving. You need to keep iterating.
Well, it was funny
So-
too, because like it's interesting because not only was I getting better at making these things as I went, we had more parts. So it was like the first boss took me like 8 hours. Like,
Yeah.
and that's like a really simple looking guy, right? And then it's funny because once you get to the last boss, you're gonna see how incredibly cool he is, and that guy took me 2 hours. Like,
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like you got this backwards exponential curve of like it was really hard to make this really easy thing in the beginning, and then it was super easy to make the super hard thing in the end.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Definitely reuse of assets and
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, keep it consistent. They're all part of the same alien surge. But I don't know who they are, what they want, but they want to kill us. So let's do that.
Yeah, and actually overall, so as you can see, this is like the main level select, and there's like 10 main levels, and we have some extra stuff, and then there's a secret level which you have to unlock with special ways. But then you have, you know, endless, you have your boss rush. So
Oh,
actually,
see there you can see some shapes.
yeah, so you get, okay, so you got boss rush 1, which is bosses 1 through 5.
I like this. I like that you did this. Because I didn't know you did this. Because I was saying, like, I really want them to see the shape.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But
the
it's not
silhouettes.
actually show it off.
Yeah, no,
So
the
that's-
silhouette, yeah.
It's great.
And you got boss rush 2, which is bosses 6 through 10. Boss rush all, which is 1 through 10. And the boss rush which is 1 through 10 at the same time.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so
Classic.
it's actually doable, and it's surprising, and people have actually done it. Not that many,
Not that many, less than 20.
but a lot have, and at this point it really kind of shows off the weapon system, because it becomes
Not that many guys at once?
it becomes a puzzle game at that point, because only certain weapon combinations really let you do it. Like if you notice common weapons people are taking, it's you can pretty much only do this challenge with specific weapon sets, and we don't know all of them, but some weapons just won't work in this because there's all 10 bosses at the same time. You need the top tier combos and everything.
You basically need defense and you need constant offense at the same time.
right, because if you survive, okay, great, but you're not doing any damage, so you're gonna die anyway. But if you do all the damage, well, you're not gonna survive.
Because there's bullets everywhere
So-
constantly.
I didn't know you made this.
Yeah, because in boss rush, you're not dodging anything.
No, yeah, you
It's,
hit.
you have to strategize your cooldowns and time everything. It's crazy. Then we have Hangeki Rush, which is, you know, 1 through levels 1 through 5. You know, all the waves, all the bosses back to back.
But no extra lives.
Yeah, no extra lives and no different weapons. You have to take one weapon set through all 5 levels, and the weapon set's the most important
so
part.
it just goes.
Right.
I see.
And Hangeki Rush 2, which is the back half of the game, and Hangeki Rush, which is everything. And this is one of the hardest challenges, and actually, I don't
I
think
feel
anyone's-
bad.
Yeah.
There used to be a score.
There was
and then
one
we
guy
had to
who
wipe
beat
the
it.
scores for balancing reasons.
Oh no.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we made a new update where we refreshed all the waves and stuff, and
I had to get rid of the score. whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically changed the
Email?
timings of
I
everything.
did.
We gave him an icon actually. He was on Boss Rush Rush. Execo Alert.
Yeah, so if you see the
Execo
icons next to people, we
logo.
reward people who do cool stuff that impress us. And Hangeki Rush, I can't even do. I mean, I personally can't beat this. And
Yeah,
it's,
I've gotten to the last level, but that was like 5 tries over the course
what
of
makes
half a day.
what makes this really hard is you can't change weapons, because the whole thing with the bosses especially is the bosses, encourage you to take different weapons. Some weapons just are garbage against certain bosses; they just don't work very well. But in Hangeki Rush, you have to take one weapon set through everything, so you need a lot of versatility. But at the same time, like, you can't get all the versatility because it's the entire game.
Got forward. Yeah.
Also, the fact that this mode takes almost 40 minutes of continuous play, you just have to sit down for like 30 to 40 minutes because it's the entire game. Yeah, it's pretty intense. I recommend trying it if you're
If you beat the whole game,
awesome.
if you hate yourself and want to try something. You want to try something hard. And that was another goal of this game, is we always want to dangle the fruit, right? Like, it's very rare you're going to 100% this game. We don't expect people to 100% it, but it's just the fact that there's always something more to do. There's always just one more thing you could do, right? Just one more extra notch harder. I mean, even the extra stage is
there, okay.
is harder than most of the other stuff and has a boss that's borderline unfair. So you fought all the fair bosses. Now let's try an unfair boss.
Is
And it's like,
there a hard difficulty setting? Or is it just on
oh, there's no hard difficulty setting, no. So I was never a big fan of difficulty settings in games like this.
It's
because,
hard.
I mean, it's either you beat the level or you didn't beat the level. Right?
Right.
It's like you go talk to your friends, hey, I beat this level, right? You're talking about the same thing.
Beat the level, but it was easy.
Right, I mean,
What's that?
I beat the level, but it was uneasy.
Right.
right. But it's like I beat the level, but I beat it, in 2 minutes, or I beat it in 1:30, right?
Everyone knows.
Because everyone knows what the time is, right? It's not like I beat it with 2 million points. Like what? Right? So it's a lot easier. But yeah, we'll jump into the Arctic, which has one of my favorite pieces of music, actually. So I did the first pass of the composition, so I sketched it out in MIDI track editor things, and then Greg's brother here actually mixed it together. So the final sound you hear is a result of my composition and then Greg's brother's mixing, and he did a great job with that. So yeah, I'll kind of jump into this, and we'll see how this goes. I'll pick some more interesting weapons. So the Spirit Bow is an interesting one. Used to be broken for reasons I'll get into in a bit, but we nerfed it pretty hard.
It's an interesting weapon. It lets you do some fun stuff.
Yeah, it lets you do too much fun stuff and beat stages faster than you should. It lets you beat bosses in like half the time. Certain bosses
Isn't that hard to
especially.
use?
What you're
No,
thinking
no.
of is the kinetic concussor.
The kinetic concussor was also broken, but now
That's a fun weapon.
it got nerfed a little too hard, and it needs a little help right now. But the Spirit Bow was absolutely broken. It was amazing. You could just shred bosses, like the extra stage
You should
boss.
probably explain what the weapons do instead of just saying it's really good.
Yeah. I guess I can get more into that game. But if you read the description as I'm kind of talking, fires a bolt of energy, absorbs the energy of enemies that are destroyed, reducing its cooldown. So every enemy you destroy reduces the cooldown slightly. And if you use this weapon while you have more than 1 meter, its cooldowns reset. So if you have a level 2 meter and you use it, it has no cooldown. You can use it twice in a row. Or if you have a level 3, you can use it 3 times in a row. It has no cooldown. So what happened is on a lot of bosses, you could go up to them and they spam a bunch of attacks. You can destroy the attacks, get the meter, reset the Spirit Bow, and keep spamming it. So you can shoot like 30 shots against the boss, just spamming them, and it shreds its health bar, and it was absolutely broken. But yeah, it was great. Fun times. Fun times.
The kinetic concussor.
How are you player?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Strategy.
strategy. So I'll get into some more exotic weapons here. Maybe go the wildfire.
Yeah, I'll quickly talk about the concussor also, since that was another weapon that was a similar effect.
Yeah, I can show the icon up here. So that's over here.
Basically, when you fire it, it kind of fires out a bunch of two things. When it hits stuff, they split apart, and you can pick them up and fire them again. So it kind of exponentially expands, where you fire once, 4 things drop down, catch them all, you fire them, they go out, they break. Now you have 8 things if you catch them all.
Neat.
And if you just normally if you use that at the front of a wave, the wave will blow up and they'll spread out more and more as they dig through. But against a boss that doesn't move and doesn't blow up, you can basically catch all of them constantly, and you just do exponentially more damage.
You basically just run up to its face and start mashing the weapon, and then the boss goes away pretty fast. But that doesn't work because against bosses it has some mechanics where it won't split and it does significantly diminish damage if you keep doing it. So
It's
just
unfortunate
you don't
that
watch
it had to
weapons.
happen.
What
Yeah.
are those at the bottom of the
Oh yeah, so the chess pieces.
chess
We'll
set.
get into that in a bit. So that set is.
That's why.
Yeah, so,
That is the chess set. You get that for beating the different boss rush stages.
yeah, so you get the pawn for boss rush 1, the rook for boss rush 2, the knight for all or something. I don't remember how you get
I
that.
think you get the pawn for rush actually.
I don't remember exactly, but you get them for doing boss stuff usually, and that ties into a sort of